Hello, everyone. Okay. Okay, so good afternoon. Today's session, we're going to talk about how to fix the right wrist when you're doing your bowing exercises. There. So before we actually go to the lessons, yeah, I want to say good afternoon to all who are here already. Yeah, so Anne, Carl, Radha, um, Rando, and others. Okay, so of course, as part of the lessons, I'll start with a review. So again, before playing anything, I've told this maybe twice already that you need to do some stretching first. You can do simple stretching by just rotating your wrists, your hand, and of course the entire body. And then after that, you can pick up your button first and just put it into the chin with or without the shoulder rest. Again, I showed you so many times already how to handle or hold the violin when you don't have the shoulder rest. So again, for those who are just first timers here, so place the violin under the chin, and then with the left hand, you just push it away. So towards your back, there, until the position's parallel to the ground. So from here, it will automatically drop down. It points downwards when you just clip it. The first time you clip it there. So all you need to do is push it there to the left, to your left, until you reach a parallel position. And then again, look here, the elbow, when your fingers are on the E string, all fingers on E string, should be pointed right to the ground, straight down there, straight down. And then as you cross to the next string, of course, you forward this a little bit towards your front, here, about 5 degrees, higher, and then 5, and then here. So once you're playing on the G string, your elbow would be pointing a little bit to the front, about 40 degrees, 40 degrees to the ground. Why is that? So that you can easily place all your fingers onto the G string. Because if this is still pointing to the ground, what happens is the pinky finger would be stretching a lot because it actually reaches only the E string. So I'm going to show you. If this is the position of your elbow for the supposedly for the G string, I'm going to show you now where the pinky finger is at. It's there on E string. So just remember when you're playing or when you're using the G string, position it like that so that you can actually reach the G string easily. There it is. And then with here, there should be a space between how can I show it? There. Between the palm of your hand, here, there. Now you can see. Here, there's a hole there between the palm of your hand and the back of the neck of the violin. There should be space there. Why? Because it's easier to do vibratos when when there's a space there, when there's a gap, and also when you're going to shift from this position, first position or half position, up to the highest position you want to go to. So that's the importance of having space between so let me show you. So this is how you hold the neck of the instrument. The violin like is this one, it should only be positioned this way. If your thumb is quite long, it's okay if it protrudes outwards. That is fine. If your thumb is a little bit on the shorter side, you can just put it there, even if it doesn't protrude outwards. That is fine. Okay, so I'm going to put like the shoulder rest. Okay. Now for the shoulder rest, one exercise I actually tell my students, like, not really toddlers, but the young ones. When those kids who are of ages 4 to let's say 10, I ask them to hold the violin this way and let go. So only the chin and what you call this, the collarbone holds the violin. Of course, with a shoulder rest or a sponge underneath. And then just let them march. Let them walk, holding the violin with the chin. So I normally would ask them to play anything or just play open strings, accompany the metronome set to 60 beats per minute. So they will just do. Oops, sorry. It's a playful exercise wherein they have to march while playing the pulse. So ta 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 ta. That is for them to solidify the way they hold the instrument. And then I also tell my students to do the bow exercise. I ask them to put their thumb underneath the thumb, there, and then holding it this way. So they will just have to swing. You'll have to swing your bow like this. So you should hear the swoosh sound. I actually don't know if you heard it, if you can hear it. So there. That's also a good exercise to for the right wrist, for it to become more flexible when you do this. And that's to strengthen also your hand grip, the bow. And then after that, again, the spider thingy. I've showed you so many times. And then fast forward here, and then you go backwards. Okay, and then yeah. So we're back there. So when you're doing the spider, do not overspread your fingers. It will be too difficult, and once your joints block, then you won't be able to move them anymore. So just put them close to each other, like this, and then just crawl. Like tiny spider. Okay, this position, or this is the more difficult one. Actually, this is very tricky. At first, it seems like this is the easier one because you can actually just let the bow slide down. Most of my students, kids, would let it slide down, but then I would ask them to go backwards. And that's more difficult. So again, when it gets difficult, it means that the right shoulder might be going up. So once you add the weight of your arm, that will be difficult to master. So drop thumb away. So from there, drop thumb away, and let your fingers actually carry the bow, and then push it up. They should push the bow up. There, as simple as that. And all the time you are doing the exercise, this should be very flexible, like weightless also, like a feather onto the bow. And then other exercises again for the left hand. I'm showing it this way. This, the favorite spider, and then alternating, and then alternate crossing. Okay. So those are the exercises for, well, beginners. You can also do that as warm-up before you begin playing anything, before you do your septic and the release gate studies. Okay, so now one exercise for the right wrist. When you want your sound to have more finesse or to be more in control, should be able to control the bow. That's the key contributor to the sound is your bowing arm. If the arm is stiff, of course, you can still play, but then the sound you would produce would also be very stiff, stiff sounding. So now, how will you soften the stiffness? So, of course, you'll have to start playing again with a very controlled bow by just doing, let me just move this chair so I can move closer to you. So when you glide the bow, you just put it lightly onto a string. Let's say A string. Just put it there. Glide it slowly. Glide it down. Oh, you don't see the lower part. So, all the way down. Once it stops there, don't do any unnecessary movement. So just be still. So fast forward or down there, you just do another bowing stroke, another an up bow, no extra movement. Of course, looking at the hair strands. Down there to the tip, no extra movement from the wrist. Then there. And double time. And double time. Double time. Double time. Double time. Double. If you're going to practice it that way, you're going to let your fingers do a lot of work. And that's what you need because your fingers should be the ones in control of the bow. So the wrist has to be very flexible, very open, not locked. So the movements like this, down, and then they're very flexible, and then back up, down, back up. And then as you go faster, it will look like you're actually swaying your wrist or your arm. It would look like this if you look at the front, like waving your hand when you play fast. But in slow mo, it's actually very still. So down, and then as you move faster, the natural impetus, or no, I don't call it inertia, but the natural bounce of the hand as you move back and forth would look like you are actually swaying your wrist or your hand. So another exercise for that, if you don't have a violin with you, perhaps you're outside or you're at school. No, if you go to school, if you're not doing it at home. So it's like holding a ball, maybe a tennis ball or a baseball, and imagining yourself throwing it, like pitching it. So if you pitch, this should be very flexible. So throw the ball. Throw, throw it with the power of the wrist. So, um, now I hit. So it's like you're passing the weight to the fingers and then throwing the ball with the wrist. Throw it. So that's when we're going to apply it to the bow. So now with the violin, This is how it goes. Slowly. It's this side. If your wrist is flexible, it will not lock like this. It should not look like this. Like it's locked up there. This should not protrude outwards. It should be straight. So it bends there. So now it's like it's pointing outwards, but at the bottom of the hand, and then as you move up, it goes like this. It goes up. Very good. So as you've noticed, well, wait, I'll do it this at this angle also. So slowly. Okay, so if the wrist is flexible and it's not blocking, it's forcing your fingers to work harder, but not blocking the joints as well. So there, and then you would see like they are really moving up and down, pulling and pushing the bow away, bow up and down. Of course, this is an exaggeration because I'm not playing. So it would look like this because of the natural pull and push of the bow because you're applying force. So there's a down force there, but then the movement of the bow here is pushing the fingers away and then going inwards. You see that? Away and then inwards. Away and inwards. There. So now the natural movement, so singing this way would be like that. Actually, it looks like the fingers are actually pushing it hard back and forth, but it's not. It's because of the force that you apply to the bow. So there's not the natural movement going back and forth. So like a wave. It's wavy because of course they don't move exactly at the same time, like down and up, down and up. There's a slight delay. So yeah. So it's like going there and back and there and back. That's when you could gauge if the wrist is flexible, when you actually could see those fingers move. Sometimes it looks like the arm from the elbow to the hand is very stiff when playing. Visually, it would look like it's stiff, but you would know that it's not once you see the fingers moving. Especially if the player is a little bit on the slim side or thin, you might not see it really flexible. So it is that you're going to play in the future where you have piano at the beginning or maybe somewhere along the way when you play it. So how are you going to control the bow when you're playing a very soft passage? That is, if you will be able to control the placement of the bow here, right at the frog, where you will just have to slightly touch the string. For piano passages, it's very important that you don't push it hard. Actually, you don't exert any effort or you don't push it down at all. You just let the bow drop onto the string and just pull the bow to avoid the screechy sound, the screechiness sound. That's too much. If you add a little bit of weight, that will be screechy. It will sound screechy. That's what you need if you're going to play forte. But then if it's piano or even pianissimo, you will just have to place it onto the string and then glide the bow. But that is not easy to do. One, of course, when it's just your first time doing it. So, what are the exercises you will do? So here, just put the bow onto any string. I choose for today the A string. Just put it there, lightly onto the string, right at the very end. Here the frog. So there. And then just pull about 1 inch, 1 to 2 inches maximum. Just listen to the sound you produce. Soft, but there should be meat. It should be meaty, not soft, but then it's too light that it doesn't have any body at all. So you should be able to have to feel or to hear the substance when you play the bow to the string. So very lightly, but then full sound. So at the beginning, only do down bows. The movement would be only from here to there, no sideways. Yeah. Now the challenge is doing it the other way around. Instead of just down bows, up bows. Should control the bow. And then down and up slowly. The sound should be uniform. Not one should be louder. There should have a uniform volume. Now without gaps. Let the fingers do the job. And once you've mastered it, you can go to the point of the bow. So the same thing. First, only down bows, but this time you're going to put a little bit of pressure with the help of the pointer. So, like, push it a little bit downwards. So going like this, push it down, so, like that. But don't lift your pinky; it should stay there. So down, nice big sound, but piano. I mean full sound. Now, if I show you what my hand is doing and my wrist while I do this, so everything there was only done with my hand, only here, only here. Never use the elbow when you play piano passages here at the point or right here. It's very easy to do pianos when you're in the middle of the bow, when you're here. So I suggest you practice a lot here and here. So this is the easiest part when you're in the middle, and then here, most difficult part here. because you cannot add weight to the bow or else it will screech. So reminder, the bow should be flat onto the string. And then you can start pulling the bow more. Once you get the feel, once you get the feel when you're playing at the frog, you can start pulling the bow more. But again, only half the length of the arm moves, only here down to there. So. And then long bow, starting from here, flat bow right away, then the wrist, don't forget, it should be very flexible. And then you can start doing string crossings. So when you do string crossing again, you need to gauge first how high you should position the elbow when I'm going to do D and A strings. So if I'm going to play to cross between A and D strings, I would need to position my elbow in between those two strings. So like here, middle of the bow, and then all you need to do is rotate the half length of the arm, like that. Again, focusing again onto your wrist. It should be very flexible. So now, just open strings. Remember flat bow. So, and always listen to the sound. You yourself should know whether the sound you're producing is the one you want or the one you hear from other violinists. It should sound like it's full, but then very open, not forced sound. So. Remember, this is an exercise for the wrist again. So your focus should be right there. So my arm doesn't look like it's flexible at all. But then if you notice, my fingers are the ones moving. Like what I said earlier, you can gauge the flexibility of your arm once you see your fingers start moving. As soft as you can. Okay, so this exercise works better if you're going to play really soft. You don't. It's not really working when you're doing loud executions, because you would for sure apply pressure into the string. Therefore, I suggest you only do from pianissimo or the softest you can up to mezzo piano, perhaps half piano, half soft. So. Control the bow. You should not hear any screeches, nor squeakiness. So. And then you can apply now your exercise number 11. So. You can even play it pianissimo. Okay, so the the softer it is, the more difficult you would experience the execution of the exercise. It's not easy. It's actually more difficult to play piano passages rather than play loudly. It's because it's not normal to like suppress the sound of the instrument and the natural tendency for us humans to apply pressure when we do something. We always apply pressure when we do something. That's why when you try to suppress it or to lessen the pressure, then it would sound more difficult. So if you play it really soft, that's more work you're doing for your wrist. So the natural shaking or circling of the wrist will be amplified when you're doing a lot of piano string crossing or string movement. When you cross here to there, of course, it has to be really controlled. You don't just cross, not just crossing, but you have to control it. You have to make sure that it stays in one place and on that particular point. So stay there. Okay, so you can apply this exercise for the scales. If you apply this exercise onto the scale, it will make your sound much better with more finesse. So, for example, you do just one octave E major scale. So try playing the scale as soft as you can, but with big character of each note. It should sound fat even when it's really soft. So that's wonderful when playing. So when it's on the louder side, it's easier to control the bow. When it's piano, that's when the struggle comes in. So you can tell amateur instrumentalist or a violinist when he or she could play really soft passages or doing a lot of big crescendos or staying at, of course, piano passages. And then you can combine the piano to loud, gradually going louder and louder and louder, and then going back to piano again. So that will force your right arm to work harder again. So starting from piano, and then going loud, and back to soft. So my example earlier. So. Okay, so when you apply the different speed of bow, it also adds color. When it's slow, normally that's from piano. And then as you move faster, the tendency of the sound is to go louder, it opens. Therefore, when you slow down again, it goes back, slowly goes back to piano. So the movement or the speed of the bow matters a lot. That's why I keep on telling when you are practicing or playing something, you should always plan the use of bow. It's very important to plan the use of bow whenever you play music that requires a lot of dynamic markings. When there are so many dynamic changes, then the piece would be very difficult, especially if it's slow. Because again, the moment the passage is slow, all the small nuances, you can easily hear them. So, for example, if you're playing like sustained quarter, no, not quarter, sustained whole tone, and then there's a crescendo, and then back to the crescendo for another whole note, like this one. Did you hear that? So that's the wrong way of planning your bow. So if you're moving too slow, and then you want to play it like loudly, forget it. You won't be able to play loud and then very slow bow movement. So you will hear that kind of hiccup. So you will have to do a lot of down bows for practice. So avoiding the hiccup or the screechiness. So, and then back. There. So the moment you start combining soft and loud crescendos and decrescendos, then you're really working your right arm. If you will be able to do that, then faster. I would appreciate if you have questions that perhaps I'll try to solve. So again, the exercise for this one is for the right wrist. I told you earlier, it's like pitching a ball. You can just do that. Or here. I always do this. So the natural bounce of the fingers would force the wrist to be more flexible, to get flexible. I always do this without holding my instrument. Or I position my arm to the side and then just do that. So the natural impetus or the bounce of your hand. Like when you're playing darts, there. That's the type of practice you want to do if you want this to be more flexible. So there are violinists posting practice videos where I see their wrist here, even forgotten it. So the wrist, when they are positioned this way, it's actually locked. This is not easy. Well, actually, not completely wrong because back in the Baroque period, that's how they play. As they say, the theorists say. That's why, if you notice, in one of my videos, I'm holding it this way. But since I was using a Baroque bow, we should actually hold the bow. So over here, because the weight is so different compared with the conventional ones now. So this is not completely wrong, but you can only apply this when you're playing Baroque music. And if you start playing more modern, the popular songs at the moment, or perhaps even classical period onwards, then you'll have to do something with the positioning of your wrist. It should be more straight. When it's a down bow, when you're completely down, this should point away from you. When you're completely up, it should point up. So it should look like this, and going down as natural as possible. No, there shouldn't be any tensions at all. There shouldn't be tensions here, here, and here. These are the three important points. This one should point downwards. This one should never move sideways. Should always be still. So here and here pointing downwards, unless you're applying onto the G string. So there. The movement of the upper arm. When I say upper arm, it's between the shoulder and the elbow. The movement of the upper arm would only be here and here. Never go sideways. And then from here to here, that's when you're going to move this way when you're going onto the different strings. So this is completely up bow and then down bow. When it's up bow, normally the elbow would move a little bit forward for you to be able to go to the frog of the violin. So I'm going the bow. So I'm going to show you. To reach the frog, you will move that just a little bit. And then once you reach this point, 90 degrees, stay. And then back there. So again, remind yourself to drop down the weight here. Always drop the weight and mind the wrist at all times. Of course, listen. The sound should be full and not airy. When I say airy, the hair strings are not actually touching the bow or the string. Okay, so any questions so far? Because we have plenty of times. We have plenty of time, sorry, for question and answer. Now, if you want to play louder, like I said earlier, all you need to do is put a little bit of pressure, but not so much when you're starting at the very end, the frog. So start adding pressure. The moment you're about to reach the, well, 1/4 of the bow, the first quarter of your bow, start adding pressure. So little by little. Until you reach this point, the bow should still be flat, and of course, a lot of pressure already. Because this part of the bow is very light, it's so light that you need an extra pressure for it to bite down this string. So I'd appreciate if you have questions so that we can try to solve it. So for those who already tried the exercises while I'm discussing it, perhaps you have experienced something that like a problem, or there's a discomfort when you're playing. Perhaps you can tell it now. You can just type it down. So the points you need to remember: at the frog, all hair strands should bite the string, but then no squeakiness. So as as smooth as possible. So then you don't need this. You don't need this sound. It won't work. So lightly put the bow lightly onto the string, but then with a big sound, even when it's soft. So let's see if you have any questions. I'm here ready to answer, or perhaps any suggestion. Just fixing my hair. Are you still there? Are you awake? Oh, thank you, dear friends, for the support. A lot of non-violinists are here supporting my live stream. So, Mami Lynn, Charmaine, Baxter, and Lyle Kablan. Thank you for coming over. So, any questions so far? Of course, the question should be about the topic today. It's all about the right wrist. So, if you've been experiencing some difficulties executing the exercise I told you earlier, remember it has to be very soft, very controlled. So very soft, but then you're trying to produce a really round sound. So full sound. It's like my favorite example, like when you're eating an ice cream with a cone, you should also have the ice cream inside. So it should be full. It should not have only the air there. So the cone itself should not be empty. It's not just the ice cream on top. There should be ice cream within also. For the dance, is it only the jaw of the right arm? Because sometimes, let's see if I play towards away from the bridge. Yes, that's also true. But then there are different types of the character. Sometimes, of course, when you want to play soft, let's say for example E string. Naturally, if you move away from the sounding point or here, away from the bridge, it will automatically sound softer. But then the quality will not be the same as when you're playing here or here. So it depends on the type of sound you want. Do you want a soft sound and soft bodied sound also, or soft sound but then very masculine? That means you're trying to play softly but then close to the bridge or closer to the bridge. So from here to here would sound more masculine. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't use that term. So it has more body. So you can also play soft, but then you're right here. That kind of softness sounds different from when you're playing here. Do you hear that? So when you're playing away from the bridge, it will sound soft naturally, but then it will also sound dull. If you're playing, if that's the character you want for your piece, then go ahead, play it over here. But for me, this is very dull. Why don't you play here but really control the bow? Then you'll have a better crispness of sound. When you're here, but really trying your best to play softly, you'll have a crispier sound. The, um, the how do you call it? The thing that when you hear like there's a cling onto that spot. So listen, that is different from here. The same pressure, but the quality of both are not the same. So even softer, they're not the same. Yes, I suggest you stick at the mid bridge point, but really work harder on controlling the bow. So as I've noticed, a lot of students. Uh, I'm not specifically referring to any of you, that when they see a piano, they automatically would go there, but they don't listen. They don't listen to the sound they're producing. If you keep on playing here when there's a piano passage, then that's the kind of sound you're producing. It's so thin, it's so airy. It's like the cone without the ice cream, no ice cream filling. But if it's here, You hear the fullness of the sound even when it's really piano, when it's so soft, but then you can still hear that it's so, I don't want to use the term again, but still so full. So work harder. You cannot be a lazy violinist when you want to play, when you want to sound more professional. You have to work harder. So stay mid between this fingerboard and this, the bridge. Stay here or even closer to the bridge. Same here. Well, for the G string, I recommend only here and just a little bit there, perhaps. Moving closer to the bridge, you won't have a nice sound anymore unless that's written in the music. When it's at punticciolo, that means the, oh, how do I describe that? Like the alien sound. This one, this punticciolo, the metallic sound. You don't want that sounding also. So that's only possible when you're playing on E string. You could go closer. You can move closer to the bridge. A string slightly away, D string of course further away, and then G string stay almost at the middle only. Stay there. Or also have the punticella sound, and that's not pleasant all the time. But in modern pieces, yeah, they always add that character. So are there any questions left? So hopefully I answered your question. So my suggestion, stick to this part. If you're on E string, you can go up to here. You would still sound nicely. Control your piano when you're here. It will sound much better. If you're doing a solo, you'll be forced to play pianos and pianissimos here. But if you're only playing with a big group, well, you can cheat. You can go here. In an orchestra, it doesn't matter because all of you would be sounding very soft. And if you're playing here, it might be that you will be playing louder than your seatmate. So move here. So it depends. When you're playing as a soloist, of course, stay here, middle to closer to the bridge in E string. But then if it's with a group, well, we can be lazy. We can play here. But then for sure, you won't be able to have that nice and crisp sound. But some conductors, if you're an orchestra player, they would really ask for you to play the fingerboard. When they say fingerboard, it's not really here, fingerboard. When they say fingerboard, it's close to the fingerboard there, not here. So here. When they say fingerboard, okay, I can be lazy already. So most of the time when you're playing classical period, classical pieces, classical period I mean, like Mozart and Haydn, and yeah, all of them, you would really position your bow at the fingerboard like that. So, because it's an orchestra piece, but if you're a soloist, well, you have to be, you have to work harder. Then, is it how many should plays in the upper part? Okay, so for everyone to hear, that's very helpful. Also in passage, does it tell you when you should play using the upper part of the bow or the lower part only? Or am I asking too early for this question? Well, yeah, for the benefit of those who are more advanced, yeah, the piece itself, even if it's not written, would tell you where to actually play it. So how would you know when to use the lower part or the upper part of the bow or the middle when there are no markings, of course, because you have to be mature enough to know that. Well, that's the conductors, but not the conductors, the composer point of view. So it's not going to tell you anymore where to position the bow. You should be the one to know. So how will you know? So for example, if you're playing a lot of, let's say, 16th notes. Of course, 16th, the easiest position to play is when you're in the middle of the bow, when you're here. And then all of a sudden, there is a piano there. So like subito piano, for example. So where do you think would I position my bow? I would normally go there to the tip right away. So, or if it's loud and then louder, I would actually move closer to the note and here. So if it's really, really loud, then you should be playing at least this part. Of course, not there the frog, but here. But if it's piano and you're at the middle, okay. So SOP. Well, it could be broken also. That when you're playing loud passages, it should be the lower part of the bow, going softer and softer and softer, softer. But soft doesn't mean that it doesn't have body at all. Soft but full sound still. So now, when it's a combination, for example, you're playing here, and then all of a sudden it's piano, and then loud again. That's when you really have to decide whether you're going to cut the sound if there will be a gap, or if you're going to play a forte right away. So how will you do it? That will be your responsibility as an interpreter of the piece. So one passage might be like this. So here. Or you'll have to move abruptly from here. So again, I actually discussed this before, that you do exercises like this also. Fast movement, I mean fast moving exercises, but only clipping the sound. So here and then there. For this kind of passage now, for your present, so from here, if you want to put, this is piano, and then all of a sudden you want to play loudly, should be able to go there right away without any scratches, or well, you should be able to put the bow exactly where it should be, because you might be hitting the wrong string. So or if you're playing here and then all of a sudden there's a subito piano, should be able to move as fast as you can. Split of a second should be right there. And then, yes, you're right. Yeah, you can't be lazy if you're a violinist, especially the right part. I keep on telling you guys that this is the one responsible for the sound. This is for the intonation and the added flavor. But for the sound, this is the one responsible. So if this is lazy, then your sound would be lazy sounding also. So here, work this out. Here is for intonation and flavor. So now, both arms are of course in tandem, but for me, you have to work this harder, because this is the one producing the sound. So if you cannot justify a piano, a good piano, from so-so piano, then it's all about your right arm technique you're going on. So another example would be, let's see, yeah, I said earlier that generally we play louder passages here, but it doesn't mean you cannot play loud passages here. Also, all it means to say is you're going to work harder the wrist, the hand, and the pointer finger. So now they have to work hard. This will push like this, much harder. So, and it's more exhausting. It's more exhaustive when you do that. So, but possible. So the passage is also asking you to do like jumps, springing bow, but then at the point, they want it loud. So, how would you be able to play that loudly if you're not going to exert effort here? Because you're required to play loudly, but then the piece specifically says that it has to be loud, but you're using the points up. This is the technique. Push it downwards with the help of the thumb. And of course, this has to be flexible. Again, the wrist plays a major role there. Has to be flexible so that when the pointer and the thumb would exert effort, this will not block if the wrist is flexible. So, okay, so hopefully I answered the question. Are there other questions there? Hello, Ben. So no questions yet. So are you still there? Okay, no questions yet. Okay, so again, another exercise to solidify your technique is, I've told you this before, is trying to do a lot of up bows in succession. So let me show you. So push it down and then flick it up. Push it down, up, push, up. That's the work of the hand with a very flexible wrist. And then this is the more difficult part. We're going to do down bows in succession. So open string only. Okay, so this is a flying staccato. It's not easy at the beginning. So first, you just need to work on doing this. So to recap, here, and then here also, and then this one. And then long bowing, of course, flat bow and piano. Even softer if you want, but the bow should glide much slower. So it matters, the speed matters when you want the sound to be longer or softer. And then finally, you're going to start with the start up bow. The flying staccato. Slowly at first. Prepare, and then flip up, flip, 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 and then down. The bow should not be released off the string. It should not leave the string. It should stay there. So it's on the string. But then the part is when you see the stick almost touching the hair strand, that's the bite sound. So and then release that. So you would see the stick going back up there, except that the hair strands stay onto the string. Release and then pull. Back, pull. You see that? the advanced technique there when you're doing already the flying staccatos down and up, flying staccatos. So let's see if there are questions. Thank you, Rexter, for staying there. Um, Carl, no questions. So who else? Oh, hello there, Shakti, Kiran. So hopefully you're getting something. If you have questions, you can ask. Throw the question. Who else? Let me check. Carl doesn't have any questions at all. Radha, do you have any question? Or who else is here? And oh, yes. So this one, I find it very difficult at first also. So the the way I exercised it when I was in college, I did very slow. So this one first. And my eyes are fixated to this direction. I was only looking at the string that I'm playing on. So here, eyes were fixated there, slowly. And then I went faster and faster. Of course, as you move faster, it will it will require more control. It's not easy. It's really not easy, especially for beginners. But if you start as soon as now, then it will be much easier for you in the future. Because once you've acquired the technique already, then you won't have to deal with that in the future when you're playing more advanced pieces. So yeah, so okay, so no more questions, no questions, no questions. So hopefully those of you who have their violins beside them, you've tried some of the exercises. They're very simple, but they require a lot of control. It's your responsibility to be able to control the bow when you play, because you want to avoid all this the nuances of sound, the screechiness, the squeaking sound, the jumping bow sound, and all of those. So you can only do away with those unwanted sounds when you really work your right arm. So it's not easy to perform in public. So one anecdote: when I was a student, um, I thought I'm equipped enough to perform in public. So I think that was about 25 years ago. So I had to perform a very simple piece. Um, I thought I was equipped enough. I said I've been practicing every day, but then, of course, not so much in my right arm. And then I got so nervous because I saw a very good violinist just in front of me, seated at the first row. And then all of a sudden, I could not move my right arm easily and properly. So it started locking. The wrist started locking. I started moving the shoulder up. Of course, my performance for violinists, I would say it's a mess. But I don't know if those who are not musicians even noticed my struggle. So, lesson: you always have a violinist. Think that there's always a better person or a better violinist watching you, or there, just there when you're performing something. So always expect for the worst. So in order for you to perform nicely, you should have you should prepare much ahead of time. Prepare yourself when there are other violinists also, because for sure you would be very uncomfy the moment you're not prepared enough, and then you see a very good violinist in front of you. perhaps one of those you admire you see on YouTube, or perhaps one of the Filipino violinists that you really admire that all of a sudden is in front of you. So when you perform, I'll think of him or her in front of you when you practice. So you always have to tell yourself, would he or she be pleased when you play? Um, well, it's up to you. If you want to have a very good performance of the piece you're going to perform, prepare yourself. This is very important. This will go automatically. There will be no problems here, for sure. The moment you've memorized the piece, you won't have problems here. The problem would always be here, because this is doing a lot of muscle movements compared to only a few muscles here. There's always the bigger muscles moving here. So you have to prepare your right arm. So what else? Yeah, if you can, Cookie Lee. So no other questions? Yeah, you heard my words of advice. So work this out, the right arm. So I think that's it. There are no more questions except for Cookie Lee's questions. Yes, you can. Any other questions before I end? Going once, going twice. Uh, not this moment. Okay, what else? So, yeah, actually, earlier I said questions related to the topic. Okay, so no more questions. So I'll then see you next Friday. Thank you for staying here, everyone, for the friends who are actually not violinists, but here for the support. Thank you so much. And for the students who are here, hopefully you would really apply the techniques that you've been getting, if you're getting something, and hopefully you would really practice the exercises I'm telling you. So we have a lot of sessions already. If you master all of them, perhaps next year will be much better than me in playing already. So up to you. So let's see. So no more. Yeah, so next week will be same time at 5. I'm gonna think of a nice subject, a topic that we could really work on. So that's all for now. So thank you, everyone. I will see you again next week. Bye. Have a nice evening.